Are we good to go? All right, we're going to be starting the panel now. Anyway, good afternoon, TGEX. Who's excited for our Riot at Tech at Riot panel today? Yeah? All right.
Yay.
Today, we have an incredible lineup of speakers with some even more incredible backgrounds. My name's Hugh. I'm a fourth-year computer engineering student. I'll be one of your moderators today.
My name is Owen. I'm also a computer engineering student, and I'll also be one of your monitors. All right, so let's start off with introductions. Can we briefly introduce yourselves and tell us about what got you into Riot and your journey? Yeah, we could start from Lindsay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Thacker. I'm a program manager at Riot. And I work with our central QA or central quality assurance group to make sure that the entire quality assurance group of quality assurance engineers across Riot are supported with job architecture and different programs that support their learning. We also set standards for quality across our products as well. And so we just work in a really broad space across a lot of our games. What brought me to Riot was actually several years of being in the game industry and early in my career and meeting a few different people across Riot in that time. And I actually describe myself as sort of a reverse recruit at Riot because a lot of folks played a lot of League of Legends and were huge fans of the game. And I played a little bit of League of Legends and I was a huge fan of Riot as a company. So it was an interesting journey that took me to Riot, but I got there through just a bit of networking and then establishing myself in my career. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, my name is Codi Fletcher. I'm also a technical program manager under Central Infrastructure. So one of the teams I help program manage, basically we support both game teams and within Riot itself for different types of infrastructure and cloud work. So a little bit about me is I used to be actually cybersecurity who became a TPM. But I really wanted to join Riot for its diversity and inclusion, and also my passion for games. I actually did not play League of Legends, but I did play Valorant when the pandemic started.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Cassi. Despite what the sign says, I am actually a senior systems engineer within the Central Tech, which is game agnostic. We do a lot of the engineering work to support the various games that Riot has. I personally worked most with League of Legends. My work history, I actually used to be a data scientist, not a data scientist, a data analyst. And I was working on a career change and I ended up working with networking with my current EM who ended up interviewing me, giving me advice, and ended up hiring me. Here I am now.
Hello, I'm Danny Myers. I am a last-minute swap to the panel. I'm a software engineer at Riot under the publishing pillar. I work to get tools into the hands of agents and players to allow them to make any changes they need to their account that we allow. So player support is the team that I'm on, and I will pass it over to Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron Hamer. I am a technical product manager. I also work in player support. I kind of focus on how do we understand players' account states and manage them and change them across all of our games so that we can help people get back into playing.
Hi, everybody. My name is James. I am the head of engineering and technical product management for a new title called 2XKO. You are the first crowd to ever hear me say that in person because we just announced the name a couple months ago. I had to say Project L for the longest time. I've been here for about 4 years. I've been on this project ever since. This is my first game studio. I quickly got into the game industry after only 20 years in industry before that. So happy to talk about that more.
Thank you so much for the introductions. So we're just going to get into some open-ended questions so anyone on the panel can answer this now. So breaking into the tech and gaming industry, as we all know, can be quite challenging, especially in the current economy. Myself, I'm sure many in the audience here can relate to how hard it's been to find internships, myself included. So could each of you share a bit about your educational background and early career experiences, and how did these steps lead you into a position at Riot Games?
I'll go first. I'm actually I was not traditionally an engineer, as I mentioned. I went to UC Davis for statistics, and I became a data analyst. I loved math and I loved numbers, and I did that as work for almost 5 years before I realized I did not want to do that anymore. I figured out I like improving processes and systems and solving problems for people. I'm very much a support role in League of Legends. And I started learning AWS, learning computer science concepts. I completed the lower division courses for a comp sci bachelor's degree. Sorry, I'm forgetting my words. And like I said, I ended up networking, so I came very much as a non-traditional, like trying to prove myself and just trying to figure out that path. And leveraging adjacent experience that I had already, because while gaming is like very centered as this very like standalone industry almost, I'm sure you guys would agree, a lot of our experience translates over from other ones, whether it be gaming or even broader than that.
I can go next because I'm also the same way. I actually had a degree in cybercrime and cybersecurity. And then I actually started as a software engineer for a fintech company. And then tried to go back to school, realized I actually like being a business analyst, technical project management. So once the big pandemic started, I decided it's a great time to switch careers. So I worked in fintech, I've worked with commercial insurance, and just grew from there. And I honestly said, well, I love gaming. Let's see how far I'll go and see if I'm already at that level to get into the gaming industry. So yeah, I learned Terraform, which is one of the reasons why I became on the team with my expertise in coding. So yeah, and I love it, working on cloud stuff still, and just expanding my knowledge as much as I can to before that engineering level.
I'll follow up. I went to the school on the hill, University of San Diego, so not too far away from here. Got my bachelor's in double majoring in computer science and music, and I got my master's in cybersecurity engineering. So more cybersecurity here. And then prior to that, I'd done a lot of web design for personal work and for some folks who hired me, and that sort of steered me in the direction of computer science. After college, I worked for a government contractor for a while in the networking space, and a couple of my friends started working at Riot, and they were like, "You'd really like it here." And so I started applying, and I think there tends to be a long application process. Mine lasted about 8 months. And eventually I started working as a software engineer within the player support space at Riot. Yeah.
I thought 1 month was long. Yeah, that is long.
Maybe I can jump in for another example here. So I have a bachelor's in computer science from your sister school in Orange County. I really wanted to work for a very cold and stormy game developer in, they're not paying me to be here, so I can't say their name, you know what I mean? Up in Orange County. I actually ended up doing what everybody does when they get a computer science degree. I moved to Japan and teach English. I'm just kidding. I actually did that for a little bit. I came back and I did kind of a more traditional tech career. I started in some startups. I ended up in kind of corporate environments. I worked in big companies, small companies. I had my own company for a while doing mobile apps when apps were first a thing. And I ended up going back to school while working full time. I did an online program through Georgia Tech, which I highly recommend for masters in computer science. And again, just kind of continued my trajectory into games. Every time I switch jobs, fire off, a dozen resumes to game companies, just trying to keep the flame alive. And finally, after who knows how many times, I got in here. This team that I worked for needed exactly what I had been doing, leading large teams, and that's how I ended up here. So there you go.
I can go next. So unlike everybody in this room and everybody on this panel, like y'all are doing way better than I am, right? So I didn't finish high school. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I mastered out of a linguistics PhD program doing computational linguistics stuff. I am a lapsed PhD student in cognitive science. But how I got into games was really, I was lucky, right? So I really like Magic the Gathering, and I was too poor to play it. So I started doing Magic judging. That meant that I started going to lots of tournaments. I started meeting lots of people at Wizards. When the program manager for the Magic Judge program left, they knew a guy, and it was me, right? So I filled in for a bit. And that's kind of how I got my start in gaming. And then it was, somebody from who had been at Wizards, who was at Amazon Games, who was like, hey, with your background, we really want to make sure that, people in our games are not being toxic monsters to each other. Could you come over here and help us think about that problem? And then, eventually, he was ex-Riot, and he was like, you would love Riot so much. Riot's a great fit for you. So, like, he hired me, and then he told me I should go work at another company, and eventually I took him up on it.
I will go next because I am last. So I actually, Danny, I loved that you mentioned you dual majored with computer science and music. I actually went to university for computer science, and I fell in love with the digital art program there. So I actually flip-flopped between art and computer science a lot. And everyone asked, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? That's ridiculous. And I was like, no, games, they combine them. It's a beautiful life where art and science come together. And so I pursued both of them long enough that I was able to get an undergrad degree in art and computer science, which was a nice accident. It was not intentional or really smart of me. It would have been from the beginning, but I did not do that on purpose. Actually, that was really helpful for me educationally, because I ended up, my first job in games was as a QA tester, which I fell in love with because you get to work with everyone across the whole game pipeline. You get to work with a whole bunch of different disciplines and different types of people. And I really fell in love with that aspect of it. So I started pursuing the type of work that involves me working with everybody all the time, and that involves production or project management or program management. And so that's how I ended up pursuing that aspect of my career, where I could work with artists and engineers and designers and QA people. And so that's where I started shifting my career. And then actually, to stick to the early career experiences part of this question, something that really helped me when I was a student and when I was just getting early into my career was doing what actually you all are doing right now, which is attending conferences and conventions that are targeted toward games or game development. And I actually met a lot of people who were also early in their career, and people who were mid in their career, and people who'd been in their career for decades. And a lot of that networking with people who were interested in the same things that I was, which was games and game development, are what really kicked off the early parts of my career that led to going to different companies, learning different things, and then coming to Riot. So that's a bit about me and early stuff.
Yeah, thank you for the insight. Building onto that, with this current part of your career, you're facing challenges in the tech industry as well as the gaming industry, with how fast-paced it is and how dynamic it is. What would you say has been the biggest challenges you guys have faced, and can you share how you've overcome them?
I can go first. One of the main challenges, even getting out of college, even with a cybersecurity degree, was going with, well, you're a woman, and you're going into this industry that's dominated by men, especially at the video game industry at the time. So that was one of the challenges I faced, and what most people have told me, even family members. I know you're watching, but you did. And that, and constantly learning from different technologies and trying not to go into that layer, as well as being a program manager. But one of the main things, that was the one main thing I faced, was how dominant the field was for men at the time.
100%. I'll go next. For me, my biggest challenge, and something I do think that a lot of people struggle with also, especially early in your career, is that remembering that it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you it's great if you work hard and reach all your goals and do everything, and you're really pushing yourself to learn and to keep up with everything that's being put on your plate, and growing yourself and figuring out where it is and where exactly it is you want to be. But there is you do have to keep remembering that long term. Like if you're not where you want to be immediately, like that's totally okay. Think long term. Like James over here, who applied every few years to Riot and other gaming studios to
It worked
finally
out.
get where he wanted to be. Yeah. It's very much you have to remember. Because like the alternative to that is if you keep treating it as a sprint, you're going to burn out and you're going to have a harder time in the long run doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that, right? Like, there's a reason that the average career length in games is under 5 years, right? People go too fast, they go too hard, they burn out. So, you know, it really is a long-term thing. I think probably for me, the biggest challenge is like, I think in a lot of like sort of broader tech or big tech, like you can make tech for its own sake. And if you do like something cool or like engineeringly challenging, like that's an end in itself. Games aren't about tech, right? Like games are about making cool content and cool experiences for people, and the tech exists to serve that. And I think it's really easy to lose sight of that, you know, in the day to day or over the longer run.
I'll go next because, and I'm not last this time. I'm going to awkwardly call that out every time I'm sure. For me, I think the longer my career gets, the more challenges I can pick from, which is not meant to scare you, but just meant to be like there's just a lot of things to select from that are just interesting moments where there were pivots in my career. But I really resonated, Codi, with your response. I think at the beginning of my career, it was a little bit different in that people weren't telling me this field you're going into is very male dominated. It was shown to me when I entered the field. So I had a lot of interesting and strange challenges with colleagues at the beginning of my career. And honestly, the way that I overcame a lot of that was to try to stay true to myself and try to internalize and understand a lot of how I felt and finding like my core group of advocates and allies and people who were going to help me in those situations. And that is really how I overcame a lot of those challenges. And I would say that outside of that specific area, a lot of my challenges in my career have not been craft or technical or like really like crunchy or techie space stuff. I feel like I've been able to educate myself or learn through classes or books or YouTube about how to overcome different craft specific challenges. A lot of my challenges have been related to people and teamwork, and none of that being really super dramatic or anything, but just learning how to be a good teammate and how to communicate really effectively. That was a new and interesting challenge for me coming out of academia, where we did student like group projects together, but a lot of it was on you as an individual to overcome specific individual challenges. And when you enter the game industry or any workforce, the big challenges you'll be facing as a team, and you'll get through them as a team and communicating effectively as a team. And so to me, those were really big, like, eye-opening moments to figure out like, oh, a lot of the stuff I need to work on or the things that will become hurdles are how the team interacts together, not like the different levels of expertise on the team. So that's some of my experience there too.
I'm going to echo that real quick. Communication skills make or break a team, like
Yeah.
10,
Yeah.
10 out of 10 times.
Nothing interesting gets done alone, right? Like, yeah, okay, there's some indie darlings that are single person dev teams, but like those are the exception, not the rule.
As the person who has a scrawled name tag today, I think it's only right for me to talk about imposter syndrome, especially when you're stepping out of college and getting into the workforce. You might feel like you don't know what's going on. No one really does. And as long as you're continuing to learn, as long as you continue to find things interesting and experiment with the new technologies or the current technologies to try new things, you're not an imposter. You are doing amazing work, and I think that's important to say.
Yeah, I want to just jump on to both of y'all. I will say at Riot, my imposter syndrome went away. I feel like with my team, I actually felt very confident in myself, also coming from a sports background. Yeah, I'm gonna make a joke about it.
There's the
Coming
rugby.
from a sports background, learning about teams and communicating is a key part of any game team, even esports specifically. That's not the sport I was talking about, but communication is definitely key, because if you don't communicate as a team, you really can't get work done. Especially if you go through multi-teams and you have to do different, with like multiple game teams, you need that communication in order to work on major projects and get those delivered.
Just to jump in, and I think to take us home, I forget if anyone hasn't gone yet. It's really interesting for me to sit and hear about some of these topics that everyone's bringing up here. My role is a little bit unique. I'm a senior leader at the company. Nobody tells me what to do. Like, I don't get assigned projects. I am the boss. I'm the assigner of projects. I'm told by the leadership team around me, like, what are we building? Who are we building it for? Like, what's the vision of what we're doing? And then my job is to go figure out, what do we have to do to make that real? Who do we have to hire? How do we have to organize them? What do we have to tell them? How do we have to help them to make them the best and most effective team that we can? So thinking about a lot of the topics that the group here is talking about, how do people communicate or really fail to communicate? Actually, a lot happens. Like, how do we fix that? We've talked a little bit about some of the historical injustices and inequities of this industry and of computer scientists and programming, software engineering in general. I am accountable for addressing that on my team, and it is an extremely challenging job to do that. How do we talk about imposter syndrome, right? Like, how do I make sure that the folks that are on my team recognize that they're on my team for a reason, because they're the best person that they could be for that specific role, and help them actually achieve that. So it's a crazy array of challenges. It's a crazy array of challenges that touches on a lot of the stuff that people up here are sharing with you as well. So it was awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing that.
Thank you so much for the insight about all these challenges you all have faced in the industry. So actually, this isn't going to be in the script, but a lot of you mentioned communicate. Oh, sorry.
We were just excited.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, right.
It's like not on the script. Don't
Oh,
worry.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's a simple one. A lot of you mentioned communication is key. Communication skills are like paramount once you're in industry. And obviously, as all of us here in the audience are college students, we're all used to the grind of academia, doing our classes. It's honestly, especially in computer science, it's really easy to isolate yourself and just get your work done by yourself. Like, how, especially at a college level, how would you say, if you had a piece of, like, some advice to give, how would you prepare yourself to build on these communication skills to be successful in a team? Anyone on the panel can answer. Yeah.
No, you go first.
You and I made the perfect eye contact. That was.
I saw it.
That was
Can
in
confirm.
communication right there. It just happened. You witnessed. For me, I think that was a great phrasing of that question, because the first time I really experienced, I think, challenging myself to be a better communicator and a better teammate was at the very end of my college career. So the way my college worked was we had a capstone project at the end of our senior year for the computer science students. And typically what you would do is you would go out into the local community and find a client that you would work with in order to produce a piece of software or a piece of tech that would support them in their business. I found the 4 other people at my university, which is very small, and the biggest output of degrees at my university, I think, was historically drama majors, and not the computer science group was just not very large. What I did was I found the 4 other students who also wanted to make games. And we were like, hey, can we convince our capstone teachers to let us make a game together for our senior project? And we managed to convince them. And now for me in my life, the stakes were the highest they had ever been from a professional perspective, because I needed to make this game with this group of people who I had actually never met before. Somehow in my 4 years of being at this university, we didn't know each other. We were all new to this project. None of us had made a game before. And there were a lot of new challenges that came up. There were little mini power grabs, someone was trying to take over this level design or take over art or try to manage the technical aspect of our game. And we all had to learn to communicate together and overcome some challenges. So my little story is meant to recommend go out and find some people to work with, put yourselves in a team and try to make those stakes real. So for me, it was being able to graduate. We had to make this game. We had to make it happen. We had to make it happen to some degree of playability. It didn't have to be the best game on planet Earth, but it had to happen for us to be able to graduate. And so with there being stakes and an actual team to rely on, that's what really set me up for like early communication challenges and teamwork challenges that I had never had in my academic career before. So if you're able to put yourself in that situation, it may be scary or difficult, but it definitely helped me out a lot. And in my early career, I felt like I could talk to engineers and designers and overcome some communication issues because my small group of students and I were able to like hash things out together in a very short period of time for a student game. So sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but I just felt like that was what helped me a lot early and at the end of my college career.
As somebody who is a hardcore introvert, that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Can I piggyback on that, actually? That's super interesting, because it's almost like the ability to talk and work with and communicate with people that are not like you, that do other things than you, is, it's a weird word, but it's kind of like a professional form of empathy, like understanding the perspectives of others. I was definitely that engineer that just liked to be told what to do and like go and crack open a Red Bull, and 8 hours later, the perfect code came out of my fingertips, right? That was fine for a while, but what I think really accelerated my career was understanding what other people do at the company and what their jobs were and what their perspectives were. Because the way you talk to an engineer, and I'm selfishly talking about engineering because that's who I am, but this is actually for any discipline or any studies. Like, if you talk to people who are just like you, there's like a pattern. You have kind of a shared context that you can just lean on. But if you talk to someone that does the opposite, for me, it would be like marketing or sales, like the super extroverted people, like just understanding that people can be that. Like it didn't compute at first. I'm like, how could people be so extroverted? But like understanding them through exposure and being able to communicate with them, I think was something that really accelerated my career. So exposing yourself to people who are different, and again, it's like a professional form of empathy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump on it. I'm gonna be the not jumping out and taking risks for a capstone person. You're not gonna get good at it. You're not gonna get really good at it until you get in a professional setting. It's going to take that professional setting practice with the active listening and everything to like really ground your stuff. And like if you find somebody with those active, like those really good communication skills with that ability to actively listen and find their words and everything, like pay attention to them, like ask them to mentor you. Like communication skills, to his point, that is what moves you up, not the coding, sure, but ultimately it's that communication skills, that ability to work with people not like you in different parts of the organization that are going to get you the recommendation and really push you as an engineer.
I'd also say that like different people have different strengths, right? Like it's not just they have different ways of communicating or different ways of thinking. They can do stuff that you can't do, right? Like they can make really cool art, or they can convince people to try your game or whatever, right? And while I would say, do game jams, right? Like that's a very easy answer. The kinds of communication problems that you have to solve when you're like, doing like a 4-day or a week-long project are very different than the kind of communication problems that you have to solve over the course of months or years. The other point that I'd make, though, is I assume most of you are like technical, like CS engineering sort of backgrounds. Okay, cool. If you think about like software architecture, you're actually thinking about the same set of problems that groups of people have when working with each other, right? You have to figure out who's responsible for what. You have to figure out how you do isolation, how you do coordination, all of that. So if you can think about how to architect software, you can think about how to work with other people. It's the same skill set.
Are you saying that people are computers?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the universe is computable. I'm a cognitive scientist, yes, but what I am saying is that like, as you're executing things over groups of stuff, whether that's done by a computer or done by people, you're still thinking about like, how do these things work together to do something cooler and bigger and more complicated than any of these like components or groups or, teams could do on their own, right? It's the same stuff.
Just to be clear, I super agree with your point. Like I see the same thing. I'm sure, again, for those that are computer scientists, have studied Conway's law, how the organization shape reflects the software shape, or the other way around. But it's really the same set of problems.
I would like to add that there are some small baby steps, some actionable things that you can do to become better at communication. Things like being a leader in a group like Triton Gaming, coming up and helping to manage a panel and ask questions, things where you're actually communicating with people with different ideas, different skill sets, game jams, those types of things. Make sure to potentially, if you are introverted like some of us up on the panel are, go out of your comfort zone a little bit. Explain to your mom how your code works, what your code's supposed to do, things that will help train you in talking to people who may not have the same set of technical background as you do. And that it's not to the same level as what you might get in a team setting, in a professional team setting, but it will help you be able to better empathize with those who may not have that background that you do.
I got one more suggestion because you bring up a good point. Discords.
Oh.
One thing I'm noticing, especially one of my husband's in like 7 different technical discords, and like one of them is for engineering on an N64, like building for an Nintendo 64. He's building his own game and he goes there for advice. Being able to do that written communication, that's also a totally different skill set that is really strong when you want to do too, because a lot at Riot, at least, a lot of our communications over Slack, and I know other companies use Team, like Microsoft Teams and stuff, like having that as well, like that's also a big piece.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing that helped me get used to explaining stuff to people with a different background. This is gonna sound really stupid, and I'm embarrassing myself, right? But I used to farm karma on Ask Reddit or on Ask Science on Reddit, right? So I would go and be like, "Can I explain like complicated science stuff to people who are interested in it but don't have that background?"
I'm gonna age myself right now. I used to do that in Yahoo questions or answers or
How
whatever.
is Babby formed? How is Babby formed?
Yahoo was a web portal.
So like imagine Google, but somebody is like making the lists by hand.
So I come from an interesting background. With someone who's done sports all their life, communication is key for anything, and including that into gaming as well. So one of the main things on like any sports team, and another thing I would like to say is join clubs. That was a main thing in college and what I did. But even if like for sports teams, I would say to my teammates on what I do, because they would be very confused. So like, we know you work in a video game company, but like, what do you actually do? So explaining that to your friends who might be outside the technical aspect is also a really good point. And especially with the written communication, that really matters, especially if you're doing documentation. Please do documentation as a technical PM, please do.
Always do documentation.
You're going to be the person who needs the docs in like 2 years. Like, trust me on this.
What do they say? Assume like an axe murderer is going to read your documentation or something like that? Like, everyone's looking at me weird. Okay. No?
Yeah, assume the next person one of the people who reads your documentation could potentially murder you.
I think also
I'm
you
sorry.
have to assume that you won't be there to explain your documentation. Is the
Yeah.
biggest piece. Yeah.
Great question. Okay.
Yeah, communication is key. But during your time in college, or for us wanting to kind of follow in your footsteps and what you're doing right now, in college, what do you think are some like key skills or like some knowledge that we could like try to have a focus on, or what we should really care about?
I can go first. Besides just the technical background, I think it's also great to know like business administration and work like how different departments work, like marketing, finance. That way you're kind of well-rounded in this sense. So like, let's say you go to company XYZ, you can say, oh, well, I know this, but I have business aspect background and like supply chain management. It all goes around in an interconnected aspect. So definitely like recommend reaching out to like, even if it's just one class, to just branch out in that way.
For some reason for me, there was an anthropology class that stuck out for me decades ago when I did my undergrad. Kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. So I'm sure you all have like your comfort zones of the things that you like to study and the things you think are going to be the most useful, but maybe take a couple random classes in there as well. I also was in the the pep band for my school. We played at like basketball games and stuff like that, which, you know, I like music anyway, but my job wouldn't give me normally exposure to that. So expose yourself to a couple things that are outside of what you think your main lane is going to be, because, you know, kind of bringing a theme together here, it's, you never know when it's going to be useful or help you connect or you know, unlock something for you mentally.
Yeah, I mean, like as a cognitive scientist, I'm just going to double down on the like be interdisciplinary, right? Like there's more than one approach to a problem. There's more than one set of expertise that can apply to anything that you're interested in, and be curious about other stuff, right? Like there's stuff that I know from psychology that lets me make better, like, you know, that lets me ask better questions in linguistics. There's linguistic experimental approaches that apply really well to, you know, cognitive psychology problems. Obviously, being able to computationally model these is really good too. So do that, but like be curious about other stuff and get good at Googling things.
I just want to point out something because we're talking about classes, which I didn't think would be very relatable. I learned about Canadian history because of where my college was. It was near Canada. I didn't think that would mean like a major class or whatever, but it brings up conversation. And actually was very useful because someone actually wanted to talk to me about Canada in one of my interviews for some reason. So you never know. You never know.
I honestly have nothing to add. I think these
Yeah.
were really good. We talked a lot, like at length, about communication, so I don't want to overdo it, but that's just been a big aspect, I think, outside of my studies and studying my craft. All the things that everybody has said about communicating and working with folks that are different from you is a really big skill for sure.
Right, thank you. So honestly, I was expecting to hear you guys should do courses in networking, operating systems, not about taking classes outside of CS. And honestly, I can really like empathize with that. I'm taking a sociology of humor class right now, and I'm learning that I don't know what it takes to be funny. So that's great. Anyway, so looking ahead, what really excites all of you on a panel about the future of technology, especially with so many of you with years of experience in the gaming and tech industry? How do you see your role evolving in the next few years at Riot?
That's a heavy question.
I mean, I guess I'll go first, right? So I'm excited about how we're starting to think about building game and game experiences around like helping people connect with each other and helping them form more meaningful like sort of relationships or experiences, right? Like I think a lot of matchmaking today is really locked in like we want fair games or we want like competitive games. And I think that there's a much larger like sort of universe of discourse around like how games can create meaning and help you connect with other people and help you make lifelong friendships around these kinds of interactive systems. So I'm really interested in stuff like that. And I'm really interested in, I hope that I can move my career in a way where I'm focusing more on problems like that and less on problems like how do we federate, you know, a set of accounts or whatever.
I also agree on that. I'm very big on community. One of the things I do like to do is helping people. So when I think about that as like a national level and bringing people together, that's one thing I really love and just wanted to jump on top of that.
I'll jump on the boring topic. Because we're core infra, like we're game agnostic, and we support a lot of the infrastructure that
So fun.
all of the games work on at this point, both live and R&D. A lot of what we focus on, like, looks at that intersection of what's cost effective versus what's performance effective. So, like, while that sounds really, really boring on paper, at least, like, to me, it's a really cool space. You're solving these really big, complex problems. You're needing to make sure they're agnostics, they're out of the box, so the game developers, they shouldn't have to worry about infrastructure. We worry about the infrastructure, so they can focus solely on the game and making the game that the game devs want to make. So like, it's a really, like, it's not very visible. It's not something you really think about when you think about the game industry, but it's so important to letting the game devs be game devs.
Yeah, we deep dive real far into that for margin improvement.
Just to chime in, like that trend you're describing makes it a lot easier for my job, which I mentioned, because I don't have to hire. I can hire people that are differentiated in like the thing that we're doing, which is making the greatest fighting game that we can. You know, there's plenty of cloud infra experts and all these other like very important and exciting technologies, but like let's have a team that is expert at infra and a team that's expert at making a fighting game, and not try to mix them. Like, why? Like, that's an impossible skill set to hire for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt you. The joke, like the decade-old jokes that League is spaghetti code, is an exact example of where that problem went wrong because they were too intertwined.
That is an insult to spaghetti. I have seen it. If I want to chime in actually with a quick couple answers to this question, because there's an obvious answer that I don't know how much or how many of us are skirting around, but I'll say it. AI is super popular right now. Like, what's happening with ChatGPT and various like other tools as well. I have no idea like where that's going to go personally. It's going to happen. Something's going to change about my job, and I'm not exactly sure yet. But keeping an eye on that one. I want to give a non-obvious answer. I think there's actually a trend in kind of the player base of games, of video games, where we've kind of burnt out on like extreme photorealism and extreme like physics and like these things that are pushing like hardware consoles and like graphics cards to like the absolute max. I think we're finally getting into like diminishing returns on more and more powerful gaming hardware, which is great because those games are crazy expensive, and honestly, there's a large human cost to making games that as detailed as those, and that elaborate. So I'm happy. I think that'll focus the industry onto honestly just more fun rather than more like flashy sort of games. So it's kind of a non-obvious answer. I should be like up here rah technology, but I'm kind of like, no, we're good. I think we're at the top. PS5's last one we'll need. So thank you.
I love that answer, right? Like, we somehow got into this like arms race of like, more polygons and more photorealism instead of like more interesting games.
Yeah, and you think of the more interesting games, and they're all indie ones. Like,
Well, except for this new and exciting fighting game coming out.
you
From
know
small
it.
indie company.
Let's go to our next question. So many of you guys have like focused your careers in data science, and like we've talked about this in the back, but like data science is a pretty new thing, and it wasn't really something that you could like learn in school. How did you go from like what you learned in school to like basically what you're doing right now in like these different like fields of data science?
I'm not gonna go first this time, you guys.
Sure, I'll go first. All right, so I didn't talk about what I did before, like I got into games, right? So I did boring like database administration stuff. That became early business intelligence stuff, which is what we call data science, and like sort of like the idea of like getting all your data in one place. We called it a data warehouse. I know we talk about data lakes now, right? So it was like very boring. So like I started doing some of that, and I kind of realized, hey, games generate a lot of data. I bet there's useful things that you can do there, right? Like, so I started playing League because I was gonna do collegiate programs for Riot. It didn't work out, but I'm here now, right? And I'm like, so I started playing League, and I'm like, I bet there's a ton of data here about like, I don't know, where to put wards that if we applied some like data science models to, we could help me learn how to like ward good and maybe remind me to look at the mini map because I'm very bad at video games, right? So I started thinking like early on, like how could you apply that sort of thinking, right? And then, I'm a cognitive scientist, right? So like I'm interested in solving problems about like how people learn and reason, but you can't do that without understanding people, but you also can't do a great job of that without dealing with mountains of data, right? So like it's kind of like this through line of like, I care about like how people learn and reason. I want to help them connect with each other. I care about games. Games generate tons of data. We have super wide, super interesting like sort of decision trees and verbs compared to a lot of other applications. I bet there's something really interesting to do here.
I see my name on this question on this paper in front of me, so I suppose I should answer it. That's super interesting. Like, I think we all have a little bit different perspective on this. So I mentioned I did a master's degree in computer science, focused on machine learning, and at the time, like reinforcement learning and deep reinforcement learning were coming out to be like very exciting. I ended up in a job in ML research actually for a local fintech company here, and as a data scientist, and did that for a couple of years. And it was really interesting doing that job after quite a while doing just like product development as an engineer, building features for web apps and phones and things like that. And then I transitioned into this role that I'm in now, and it's helped me make a lot of decisions about like what we should be doing for our product with data, like from the very beginning, before there was like anyone telling us what to do. We brought in the data team, the data engineering team. We've been working with an ML research team on some really exciting stuff for a very long time. And so even though I don't technically hold the data science, machine learning job title anymore, that experience has given me, the ability to do what I think is going to be some really awesome stuff for players, because I kind of had seen it done somewhere else and could bring that into this environment. Which, I don't think I'm saying anything controversial here, but like data in games is kind of finally taking off, whereas data in tech has been taking off for a while. It's kind of a little lagged behind. And so I'm really excited to do some really kind of advanced stuff with data and machine learning and AI and all these things in our product.
Okay. I'm gonna talk for Ian. He's not here today, but he is my husband, so I know him well enough to know what his career looks like. He's currently a staff MLE at on League of Legends, the game. When he was completing his bachelor's, he focused mostly on like operating systems and compilers, and he took a sprinkle of machine learning classes. And with that, he went and worked on a video streaming platform. All the hype. And he ended up cycling across a couple teams. He went from there to data engineering, to data infrastructure engineering, which is like a lot of like data pipelines, data streaming. And then he took a step back and went into services. And then he moved over to his current data and machine learning team. And each step of the way, he's taken the growth from there, and it served him up to where he is now. Because it's using the same tools to solve different problems, just with ML. But what he likes about it isn't necessarily the machine learning. He works with the data scientists. They're the ones that do the data things and build the models and everything. His job specifically is to take those models and shove them into the game engine. So he is actually a cross between an MLE and a game dev engineer, where he's working in the game engine, putting those models in there, making sure they work properly and all that stuff. And it kind of just comes back to like everything you've done before, like it just kind of all piles up into it, and you kind of it's like a gradual shift almost, because most people in ML and data science, I wouldn't say that was their first position unless they did a PhD. It's like they take their experience with them into that spot.
I mean, I think on that, like, most careers only make sense, after the fact, right? Like, it's not like you're like, oh, yes, here's where I'm going to end up, and here's the next logical step, and here's the next logical step, and I'm building towards this, like, end game, right? Like, I mean, I guess if you've got, like, your crazy plan and you're doing that, like, more power to you, right? But I don't think that's how life goes for most people.
No, it isn't. And honestly, like, for me and him, and probably you guys as well, like, getting into your career and being like, oh, I like this stuff, I don't like this stuff, it makes it so much better and easier to, like, find that long-term path. Like, you don't need the answers right away. You might not have them, and that's totally okay.
Well, and like this kind of goes back to the advice that we were giving you, which is like try other stuff while you're still in college, right? Like this is like the lowest stakes time to try something is like right now, right? So do it.
All right, thank you for all these insightful answers and advice. So we're running a little behind on time, but we do want to open the floor to some questions from the audience. So our mic runner Grace will organize people. If anyone here can come up and ask. Try to keep it to a minute of question asking though.
Run.
All right, time to practice these communication skills, guys. Let's go.
No, this one's even easier. This is just queuing.
Don't be scared. It's okay. We don't bite.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. Hi. Okay. Wow, that's loud. Yeah, so I'm Zach, and my question is that I feel like with UCSD especially, or like a lot of comp sci programs, it suffers from this thing of being like very, very like sterile and very academic. So I was just wondering like what you guys like personally, like what you guys are looking for when you guys like hire people out of college, because I know like obviously all of us are going to have like UCSD, this. But I'm saying, like, what do you guys look at, like, past the college, and what are things that you'd like to see?
That's not just UCSD.
Yeah.
Eagerness. One of the values at Riot is stay humble, stay hungry. And like, you can teach technology on every day of the week. You cannot teach somebody to have a good attitude about learning and taking on problems and embracing failure and learning from it. That will get you places.
The interpersonal skills will help you a lot besides academic, because you can't really teach interpersonal skills.
I think it's totally possible to teach people interpersonal skills, but they have to be like willing to learn and wanting to work with other
Motivated.
people, right? Like you can't teach
Motivated.
that part.
Yeah.
Just to add one more thought to this is like, when I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking at something that shows me you're doing something that's just not on the obvious path of your degree. So, you know, fill in any blank. You said UCSD, but like any school, like we get a bunch of resumes that say X, Y, or Z. So something that shows me who you are and like what do you care about, like what are your values and like what are the things that you're interested in, what are the things you're interested to put in time to do as well that aren't the obvious on rails answer of, you know, getting a computer science degree. That's a prerequisite. You still have to do that part, I'm afraid. But show us who you are. Like show us who you are, what you care about, and you know that actually stands out quite a bit for me.
I used to give advice to new people on my teams, like early career, like be the go-to person for something, right? I don't care what it is. It could be sushi recommendations. It could be like hot takes on art. I don't care, but like be the person who's into something. Could be work related, could be not, right? The other thing I'd say is like just have evidence that you can finish stuff, right? Like I'm much more impressed with like 3 bad game jam games than I am with like, you know, a complicated resume or coursework or anything like that.
Just to add on to that, be passionate about things, whether that's one thing like sushi and you know all the great spots, or whether that is what you are doing work-wise. Have that passion, be interested and interesting in that space.
But don't burn out.
This is an impossible list of things to do at the same time. Thank you for the question.
It's okay. Thanks so much.
Hello.
Hello.
I had 2 quick questions. That's all right. One was kind of roughly, how do you pick what's like the next project to work on? Because, you know, it started with like, and I've played most of like the Riot games, the MOBA, first-person shooter. Then you took over card games, and then went to mobile. Then the fighting is coming out, and now I'm waiting patiently for the MMO. It's so yeah, roughly like, how do you like choose what comes next? Somebody just come up with the idea, or yeah.
You're the only one that knows.
Everyone's looking at me. So the reason everyone's looking at me, our game is within an office called the Riot Discovery Studio. It used to be the Riot the R&D office, which is where all these ideas are incubated. So for, you know, I'm not going to tell you what we're working on, but like, or no, slip me a 20. No, I'm kidding. For every title that you know about and have heard about, there are many, many more that we've never talked about and never shared about. And they're in varying stages. They're a little bit better than a game jam game, or they've been worked on for some time. So there's actually a very, I'd say, structured process for evaluating, like, what do we go after? We actually invest quite a bit of time in trying a bunch of different genres and business models, and like, how do we use our IPs that we have. We have, you know, this Runeterra, we have Valorant, et cetera. So there's actually a pretty structured model in it. I don't know how to tell you a URL like in a live setting like this, but if you Google for like Riot's R&D philosophy, there's actually a couple articles that talk about how we assess opportunities and how we, you know, ultimately decide to move forward on things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would also say that we have part of that process, and a bunch of other places do this. I think most notably King. Like, there's this process of like, you take a small idea and then you validate it, and then you see like, can you build this in a sustainable way, right? So there's like a series of gates, right? I think we both at Amazon and at Riot, we call it our gate evaluation process, right? So it's like, there's like basically hypotheses you have to prove about your game before you invest more into it, right? So in addition to figuring out where to go and figuring out which bets are worth doubling down on is like also a very structured process that's pretty easily to Google.
Right, then I guess a small follow-up. Let's say if I had an idea of a game I want to make, what would you recommend be like the next steps I take? Like develop concept art, develop like a basic prototype, or share with others?
Playable slice, man.
Yeah, build it.
Yeah.
Like,
You want to show like that the core loop is fun, right? Like that's what you're going over, right? The very first proof point is like, is there a fun game here? right? And then you can worry about sustainability, about monetization, all that other stuff, right? But like, you got to find the fun first.
Use basic shapes. The art doesn't really matter until something fun happens. Unless it's about the art.
Yeah, no, I think this is all good. I have to chime in support of the art, in case my creative director watches this later. Whatever's calling out to you, like whatever you think the thing is going to be, whatever you think the thing that makes your game special is, that's where most of your development should go. So if it's the art, go for the art. If it's some like playable like mechanic, like build it and show what it is. We use a phrase internally quite a bit where we say we can squint and see the game, because a lot of these games that I'm describing that are in our kind of portfolio are in varying stages of development. So you kind of have to like squint to imagine what the full game would be afterwards. But it's actually a very powerful mechanism, because you don't have to then build the whole thing to get support and to understand if you have a hit on your hands, to play test something. That's actually another really important part, is to get people's feedback on the thing that you're trying to make. As soon as you have something that someone could say, I like it or I don't like it, show it to them and find out what it is. So.
And you don't even need to build a fully playable thing, right? Like you can build a paper prototype, right? Like Twitch Sings was prototyped as a PowerPoint deck.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for coming out here. Are you accepting any questions on 2XKO?
$20. No.
You gotta charge more, man.
How about ask your question and I'll do the tap dancing around the secret stuff.
For sure. Well, I've been following 2XKO and its development, and it's had a really unique, I'd say, creation process. I've seen a lot of like FGC community members joining in, like Marlon Pie being on the team. So that's really interesting. Can we expect anything soon?
Yes.
What do you think we should do? No, I'm sorry. It's been really interesting watching this team develop. Like you said, we brought on like pro players and stuff, and I am nowhere near that level, so I don't play test with them when I can avoid it. But we have a great team. They're doing a lot of great stuff. I think we've said publicly we're going to have a take-home play test later this year, and so watch our socials.
All right. And I'm trying to get a marketing degree, and like, what would be a good step to take for like joining the gaming industry for marketing, if you know of any?
Communications, definitely. Like for marketing, do you have like a communications degree beyond that? Like broadcasting communications?
Yeah, I've taken a couple.
Oh,
classes
yeah.
for it.
So that'll definitely help. I mean, I really can't answer him for the marketing team, but yeah, I think just, like I said, those interpersonal skills will benefit in comms and everything like that, but I really can't speak a lot for the marketing team.
So I used to do organized play events for Wizard of the Coast. I was in marketing, right? So I like get started, right? Like start small, start now, right? Get involved with cons, get involved with local cons, do stuff there. Get involved with like local communities and do stuff there to like kind of like help grow presence, grow reach, grow social channels, whatever kind of marketer you want to be, right? Like I would start leaning into that. I think that having a take on how to do it in a community-based way is going to be pretty powerful, because most of the most impactful marketing efforts, unless you get to like, the big AAAs who like, blow up tanks or whatever as part of their marketing stuff, is going to be through like community vectors, right? It's going to be engaging with the fighting game community. It's going to be engaging with fighting game pros, right? To talk about 2XKO, right? And if you look at how we're doing it, you'll see us like that's the approach that we're taking, right? So like I would get started and I would model what you do based on like what the coolest games that you're most excited about are doing.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, I came up from the tech booth, so no one yell into your mics for the next 30 seconds. Thank you. So I was wondering if there was a specific moment that stood out for any of you as like your favorite thing that has happened either at Riot or at somewhere else that you've worked. It could be related to a project you were working on or just like an interaction with your team or something like that.
I want to put the generic answer of actually working at Riot. But, with the diversity and inclusion here, isn't my mic still on? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Cool. I was like, I don't know if anyone can hear me. I think that's one of the major things. And for central infrastructure, our team, we just got a whole new reshuffle squad. So we're working with a bunch of new different people and different personalities. And I think it's very enjoyable because you now have a core group and support group of friends, of coworker friends, besides the outreach that we have with different game teams. I can't talk about anything else about, games, but I think that's the most exciting is the networking in between Riot.
I think for me, I got to work on like one of our larger projects in the past couple years, which was moving Riot Games as a whole out of the physical data centers up into the cloud, and I got to kill a lot of things, and it was amazing.
One of my favorite things, as a software engineer, we don't always get to see the results of the work we've done. It might just be a little piece of a much larger thing that gets the notice, but I've had the opportunity to see some of the portions of tooling that I've worked on for player support agents, and some of the pieces of the support websites that I've worked on actually be in use and helping people. So
Oh, that's so awesome. It feels so good when that happens.
it's a great feeling.
So 2XKO had a demo last year at a fighting game tournament called EVO in Vegas. So we brought a build. It was the first publicly playable build of our game, and you could just play it at the convention. As software engineers, sometimes we're abstracted away from like the impact that we can have. And for me, it's actually even further because I don't even write code anymore. I hire people that write code. And so it was an incredibly singular moment for me in my career, not just to be able to see players play our game and react to it, but to see my team that built the game actually get in there and mix it up and talk to players and themselves get that ability to get that kind of direct hit of feedback and kind of positive energy for everybody. So that was a really awesome moment.
I'm gonna pick three. The first time I saw text I wrote in League of Legends, the first time when bots launched, I did a tiny bit of coding on that, but the new bots launched, people loved them. I just getting to work on that. That's super cool. Bit of a spicy one. Riot actually had to spin down our investment into Legends of Runeterra, and we found jobs for everyone at Riot, and that was the coolest thing. I didn't know that game studios could do that.
Since Josh is back there, I'll just say thank you. To the staff. I'm sure you really appreciate it. I was just a bit curious about when you're talking about burnout. I guess before that, I just want to thank you all for being here. I think this has been one of the more insightful panels I've ever been to. But yeah, I work in an office under the student government here, where we plan concerts and events for the student body. And as a result of being so high profile, we deal with a lot of feedback, criticism, and just generally opinions from people. And as one of the leaders in the game industry, I'd say, how do you feel your relation with that is? Does it affect your burnout? How do you let it affect your self-validation? And yeah.
I can speak from the perspective of a centralized team inside of Riot. So I can't speak to Riot as a whole company or organization receiving constant feedback and eyeballs from millions of people. But my team works in a space where we have customers internal to the company. So we hear a lot of opinions and thoughts and ideas about how things should be or how things aren't a certain way, or just things that people want that would make them feel more supported. Honestly, something that has helped me with taking in larger amounts of feedback, or even taking in feedback at all, if you also think about it from an individual perspective, we all will receive feedback throughout our careers on a one-to-one basis and a one-to-many basis, depending on how visible the work is, like you just said. And so for me, a piece of advice that I got at Riot actually, from a mentor of mine, was that you can receive a lot of feedback and you can read all of it. And what's important is that you read it, you understand or try to understand what that feedback is saying, and you compare that to the systems you're working in, the reality of your work, and what you're capable of doing. And it's okay to receive feedback, accept it gracefully, and then say, okay, we can't action on this feedback, or we won't action on this feedback, and then move on from there. And the important part is acknowledging that the feedback is there and that it's real, and taking it seriously to analyze where it could fit in or where maybe you should take action. But I think an important part, and this is an important piece of potentially avoiding the burnout that comes along with feedback like that, and if that feedback comes in large amounts, is to understand that you can't respond to all of it. Because if you took action on every piece of feedback, then you would be producing work or making something that is trying to be built for every nitpicky thing, and you can't really do that. So you have to really understand what you're making, what the purpose of it is, what the goal of it is, and then accept feedback and take action on it, or don't take action on it from there based on your expertise.
+1.
I think just to add to that, there's a level of the intentionality of the work that you're doing that you have to understand what your purpose, what the goal of the thing you're working on is, and understand that oftentimes the people who are giving feedback don't have all of that context. And so there can be a bit of a disconnect there between people who expect something and your intentions with the things that you are giving them.
I recently just talked with my team about burnout, so this is actually a really timely question. So you're touching on something really important. I think when people think about burnout, it's kind of a blunt idea in a lot of people's minds, but there's a lot of nuance to what burns people out. There's the obvious thing of like, you just have too much work, you have too much stress, right? In a professional setting, things like your compensation can add like stress on top of that. I feel like I'm not paid enough, things like ideas and feelings like that. But some non-obvious things that I tell people to be aware of. One is like your work community, the people around you at work. And so as you're talking about receiving tough feedback and maybe unfair feedback sometimes, it's hard to do that alone. It's easier if you have others to talk to and like process feedback together with. Some other non-obvious causes of burnout, your autonomy, your ability to control what you're doing and have an impact on others kind of in your own way. And I'm blanking on the other one. I had one more I was gonna say. Stalling for time, I can't remember. But there's a bunch of non-obvious reasons for burning out, and so it's not just that. So surround yourself with some good people. Values. Is what you're doing important? I think what I'm doing is very important, and I think that the company that I work for aligns strongly with my values. So does your organization or anyone's organization that you are part of? Does it align with what you're doing or not? Because that actually can be a source of burnout that you might not even have thought of. So.
I mean, for me, the things that have burned me out the most in my career are when I really cared about something and I couldn't do anything about it. Right? So that gets back to that autonomy point that James just made.
For me, the two things that have historically been burnout and I've had to learn to manage, and this reflects for my husband as well, who's been an engineer for almost 10, 15 years now. Number one is learning how to separate yourself from work, especially in this day and age where we have Slack, we have email, we have our phones on us, learn how to completely separate from it. It is hard these days because you don't always just have that commute drive home anymore, especially if you're remote. That is a really hard skill to learn. And number two is remembering that that feedback and people's reception to your work is not an indicator of your value as a person and as an engineer. Everybody is going to make bad or questionable decisions that other people don't agree with, and that is just a fact of life. It does not make you a less capable or less valuable engineer person. It's just it's something to help you learn and grow and continue to move forward.
Thank you so much for the answers. I really appreciated that. And yeah, it is a little topical for just all the organization I've seen where there's always some degree of burnout. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting coming from a professional setting. Yeah.
Great question.
All right, I think that about marks the end of the panel. Thank you for all the questions from the audience and the even more fantastic answers from our panelists. Can we just have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Justin.